Newcastle Link's legacy paper. Rachel, I think you're going to talk to this, is that right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Right, in 2013 I worked with some of the Newcastle Link members to develop a legacy package. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I've been looking at that past package to see what Healthwatch Newcastle should be doing with it. So I've looked through it and I've looked at what Healthwatch Newcastle has already done. Basically, we have used Newcastle Link's policies and procedures. We've also used their advice and written role descriptions for our champions. We've also set up a process to ensure that our volunteers have the right skills and abilities to do their roles, and set up a support and supervision process for them. We have set up a governance subgroup, like Newcastle Link recommended. We've also taken time to get in touch with VCS organisations, and we have committed to speaking to key organisations as issues come up as soon as possible. So they were all things that Newcastle Link wanted to see us do. There are a number of other things as well. And we will be doing these by delivering our future plans. One of the things that Newcastle Link wanted us to do is make use of themed task and finish groups, so we're going to be doing something like that. We're also going to make use of the local volunteer centre. We are going to be scrutinising our work for community for the community views that are missing and fill those gaps where needed. We are also going to recruit, train and send representatives to external meetings where needed too. We are going to agree a protocol with the Care Quality Commission, and we'll also touch on Newcastle Link's walk-in centres work as well if our future plans go ahead. So a lot of it we have listened to and started to act on, but there are a few things in the legacy package that the board needs to consider. One of them is a piece of work Newcastle Link did about Choose and Book. Newcastle Link recommended that when Healthwatch Newcastle is up and running, that we review their work on Choose and Book and see how to take that forward. And Newcastle Link suggested that we do that sometime in April 2014. Newcastle Link also recommended that we consider the Liverpool Care Pathway and what's happening with that. It was reviewed in summer 2013 and a report came out about the Liverpool Care Pathway and how it should be used. And the link recommended that we look at that report and decide whether we need to act. And they recommended a date of February 2014. They also recommended that the board considers setting up leads in key areas on the board. And one thing that the local government association recommends is appointing dignity champions and leads for quality and safeguarding. So all of those things are recommended by Newcastle Link. And for that one, assigning key leads, they recommended April 2014. So that's what I've looked through and what I've identified as potential areas for future work. So it's asked that the board notes this information and raises anything from the Newcastle Link's legacy package that you think I may have missed, and also to decide how to take and if to take those 3 areas of work I mentioned forward. So that was Choose and Book, the Liverpool Care Pathway, and identifying key leads for the board.
Thanks, Rachel. Firstly, I've read this several times since I became chair, and it's fascinating the amount of detailed information there is in here. And there were some particular areas that I found of particular interest that I'll come on to a bit later when we've gone through the suggested areas that Rachel's highlighted. But I think that Health Watch Newcastle has been left a really good legacy for us to take up if we feel appropriate and to take forward. And in particular, some of the internal structural things that we need to do around policies and procedures, and the advice that we've been given that that they've taken from their learning in setting up something new. So thank you for that, because I think it's made our transition into Health Watch Newcastle a little bit easier. Now I'd like to open this up to the board in terms of discussions around those three particular areas, and anything else that anyone else has come up with in terms of the legacy document that we feel we ought to take further forward.
I'd like to know about the choosing book. It just says how to do it, and it just says review how choosing book has progressed. I'd like to know why, what's the purpose of that. I think we're a lean organisation. We need to use our resources very wisely, and I'm not sure that what the legacy report said convinced me that we needed to go down that check the choosing book thing. I think there's a lot more things that have happened since that maybe are of a higher priority. I do think that the Liverpool Care Pathway is something that needs to be discussed, though it has been, I think I understand it actually withdrawn, it's being withdrawn over the next 6 to 12 months. So it's what is going to be instead, not the actual pathway. And again, as a key, the roles that the board leads are fine to me.
Thanks, Sarah. Just going to the last point, we've got a development board meeting just in a few weeks' time. And I think we need to consider that then. It's going to be part of the agenda. Who's next?
Thank you. I was just wanting to ask, is there any timescales to the three priorities that have been laid out? Do we have a certain time period in which to take them up, and how long would we expect each one to take?
I think the board needs to decide actually whether we're going to take these areas forward. The way that we've worked so far and the way we've agreed is that we would work around areas where we've got building evidence where there's an issue. And I think we agreed that at our last public board meeting actually, and we're using the Ofsted, what's the word, the 1, 2, 3, so that if we've got building evidence as an issue around an area, that's when we're going to start to take work forward, or whether our partner colleagues in the VCS and our statutory organisations are receiving information as a building groundswell. And I think that's what most probably differentiates us slightly from the link that we want to build upon evidence that we're getting. I don't know what other board members think about that. I mean, we agreed. So I think in answering Sarah your comments about choosing book, I think we've got to see whether there's a groundswell of evidence that there's an issue with it. Do we know that? Does anybody know? Any of the staff team know whether there's any issue around choosing book? No. We haven't got any evidence at the moment. Okay. And the Liverpool Care Pathway, as you say, is being phased out and being replaced by something else, but we need to see what that's being phased in with. Yeah? Anything else from the board before I come up with the areas that I've identified? Just considering what I've said about having a building evidence, these are just particular areas of interest for me, but I think most probably linked to some of the developments that Health Watch Newcastle are going to be working on over the next few months. I've mentioned already about board roles, and we'll take that forward in our February development board meeting. But there were 3 areas that I found of particular interest. And 2 of them are, I think, relevant, and I'll start with those. And one is about mental health and transition from young people into adult life. This is politically very hot at the moment, and we know Nick Clegg is actually launching that paper today. And we know that Alistair, who works in that area, has been working on, was it with Health Watch England, Alistair, about a survey about how to look at mental health services?
Yes, I've been doing some of that. I'd be slightly wary about having too narrow a focus on transitions, because transitions are a key point across many aspects of mental health and physical health, mental health, and also there's younger people into older people's services, but also the interface between adult mental health services and older people's services. So we need to be mindful about all those transitions. There's a fair bit of work going on. There's a lot of nice principles being espoused. There's not a lot of change happening as yet.
So Alistair, looking to your expertise in this area, what do you think we should be doing around mental health at the moment?
Ensuring it's high on the agenda, and I think, and this might be related to some of the other points, keeping an eye on where commissioning is happening, because mental health is one of those areas where you have national commissioning going on through NHS England, there's some stuff that's going on through CCGs, there's some sort of sub-commissioning which is going on through the NGW Trust, and then of course there's social care mental health, which is local authority, etc. So it covers all of those areas, and ensuring that we know who to speak to and what they're thinking.
That's helpful, Craig. I assume that you're going to be looking at that when you're around meeting people, trying to work out where the bits of the system are that we need to be aware of. Okay. The second area was congenital heart services. This is still ongoing, and I'm not quite sure if we know where we're up to in the process with this. It's gone very, very quiet, and I don't know whether any of the board members know or any of the staff team know where we're up to with congenital heart services review. Deborah, would you mind updating us? Is that okay?
Yes, there was something sent around. I sent round to the staff team recently. The congenital services is currently being reviewed, and is it the Health Watch England are going to be meeting with all the local health watchers to discuss things in their individual local authority area, and that's quite imminent, I think February, March time, but we haven't had a date yet.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. I actually saw that email. Now, my understanding that was Health Watch England getting Health Watch Newcastle's up to date speed with what was happening and what has been happening to date. What I would like to know is where we're up to in the process of the review. I'm actually from a congenital heart background. I worked in the service for many years. I've done lots of reviews myself, so I'm actually really up to speed with it. But I think we're lost off in terms of where we are in terms of that review process. So if someone could actually find out what the deadlines are, because Jeremy Hunt's just written, I think just before Christmas, it just seems to have gone really quiet, and this is really relevant for the North East and the north of England, not just Newcastle, because we've got fabulous services here. So that was something else I picked up out of the linked legacy document, which I think we do need to have a watch and brief on. And then the other area which I just found fascinating, and I think given the fact that we're looking at having a groundswell of evidence before we actually look at anything in particular, this most probably goes against all of that, but I know we're going to come on to it maybe a little bit later about setting up a young people's shadow board and getting someone involved to help us with that. But there was a fascinating piece of work done on the lifestyle attitudes of young people. And the differences between different backgrounds. And given that we know that some specific cultural groups have more tendency to develop certain types of disease, I thought that was really quite an interesting area, most of all just for me to sort of think about, but maybe something we could pick up with the Young People's Board. Don't know what others think about that. Okay, so going back.
Just a quick question, the young people board, how are we going to aim to recruit to that, and what sort of person will we be looking for?
The proposal at the moment is that we will get basically a youth development worker from an existing voluntary sector organisation to work alongside us to set that shadow board up, and we will work closely with that person to establish the criteria and establish the board. But we'll be reporting that back at the next board meeting. Basically.
Sorry, I think it's a really important question, because we do know from the evidence that if you just try and replicate other structures that doesn't work with involving young people, and from what we know about health inequalities and what the chair referred to, it's really important that we get a spread and that we actually go to an existing young people's organisation, because they are the experts, whether it's about a youth worker or giving them money towards doing it. I'm not really bothered. I think that's where the expertise lies, rather than, with respect, the staff here trying to do something else. I mean, there's already a youth council in Newcastle, and I know a lot of work was done with that youth council to ensure there was a broad spread of young people that reflected a variety of views, backgrounds.
So we're all just complaining about this microphone. Can you hear okay out there? It's not too loud, is it? Okay, sounds really loud up here. Okay, so can I just summarise in terms of this agenda item, that in terms of choose and book, unless we find that we've got a groundswell of evidence, we'll be aware of it but not take any work forward at the moment. The Liverpool Care Pathway, we just need to be aware of what's coming along, and is it going to be working, and I think that's future work. Board lead roles we'll be talking about 2 weeks today. In the areas I raised, the lifestyle attitudes of young people we'll put on hold until we've got our young people's board established. Congenital heart services, one of the team members is going to investigate where we're up to with that national review. And thanking Alistair for his advice around transition and mental health, I think, is to be aware of that. And Craig will also make himself aware and the team aware of where the various different aspects of mental health services are being commissioned. Is that right, Alistair? Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much correct. I think you also need to think a little bit on the mental health side of things about liaising quite closely with neighbouring health watchers, simply because in many respects services are not Newcastle only. They might be North of Tyne, or they might be Northumberland, Tyne and Wear wide, and in order to call certain services to account, it might be a case of liaising closely with neighbouring health watchers.
Thanks, Alistair. I think that's a really important point, and certainly for a lot of the areas that we look at, neighbouring health watches need to be considered as well. Is there anything else? Is there an agenda item before I move on?